one slide lost its narration, but it's now restored here.
Now, there is another important practice, and it's one that's not really very well understood. It is the vigil, the meditation that Yeshua taught. It was known as shakad. We hear about it in the New Testament very often. You will find it translated as watch. What I say to you, I say to all. Watch. The word is shakad. And this word is a powerful meaning in Jewish mysticism. To keep watch is keeping watch was something people did defensively when they lived in a dangerous desert world, and there had to be people who were lookouts to see anything or any groups of people that could be dangerous coming in long distances. And that was a very important thing that people did. But the word shakad developed way beyond that. It meant to involve oneself in a single-pointed, very alert, focusing activity. We would today call it a vigil, keeping vigil. The only place now that traditional Christianity does anything that we hear much of with vigil is the vigil that's kept between Good Friday and Easter. People sometimes keep vigils. They stay up all night in vigil. But the all-night vigil was a very important part of the inner teaching and inner training that Yeshua gave to his apostles and disciples. It was a method of Jewish contemplation or Jewish meditation that was single-pointed. It was unlike Greek contemplation of images. It was not bhakti. It was not devotional. It was truly yogic and meditational, and it was drawing oneself up into communion with the higher worlds. It was the starting point for Merkaba mysticism, for divine ascent in vision. It was a contemplation of the divine realities of the invisible sovereignty of God that existed at all times and all places and was beyond the sight and vision of most human beings. This was done very often in wisdom traditions. Meditative traditions or vigil traditions are known from the Kabbalistic and other kinds of schools of proto-rabbis, also of desert prophets. We have a wonderful description of meditation and a description of the prophet Elijah, who goes to the top of Mount Carmel and he sits and he puts up his knees and he puts his head down between his knees and undergoes intense meditation as he tries to bring rain to the parched land. And we have other descriptions of Elijah doing things like this when he goes up into the cave and he wants to hear the voice of God, but the voice of God was not in the fire, and that he heard the fire, he heard the thunder, but it was in the still small voice. This is the kind of vigil that is being kept and being taught. It's a single-pointed focus in silence, and the best time and place to do it was at nighttime, when the city had quieted down and the whole human vibration and hubbub of humanity had grown entirely quiet, at least on the physical level. And the best place was up high on some elevated place it would be called a mountaintop, but they don't have really very big mountains, but a hilltop. So why was it done at night? Well, there were two heavens. There was a night sky and the day sky, the Shemayim, the two heavens. And the night sky was the heaven where ascent could be experienced to the throne of God. It couldn't be done in the day sky. It couldn't be done under the sun. It had to be done under the stars. What we call the Transfiguration event, the story of the so-called Transfiguration told in the Gospels, is a story of Yeshua taking 3 not one, but 3 of his closest disciples out at nighttime onto a hilltop. And there they kept vigil. And without their knowing exactly what they were looking for and what they were doing, they simply kept vigil. They tried to stay awake. And they grew cold, and all of a sudden they saw something. They saw Yeshua, the Master, talking to other beings, beings that no one else could see. And they interpret them as being Elijah and Moses. That event, I would maintain, was a kind of preliminary to some very deep training that could have been done in understanding the kingdom of heaven and so on. Now we know that according to the traditions of the Talmudic traditions of the early Jewish saints and Jewish fathers, that the only way that the Merkava mysteries, the mysteries of high ascent, were taught were one-to-one. They could be not taught in groups of 2 or 3. So what Jesus was doing was probably not unlike what was done in the Hermetic mysteries with very small groups of very advanced disciples, experiences that were transmitted to them. But we do see some examples outside of the New Testament of Yeshua working one-to-one. And with one of them, it's Mary Magdalene, and with the other, it is a disciple that's described in the secret Gospel of Mark. And when he worked with those people, who must have been very advanced and very talented, he taught them, according to what we read, as he was teaching them the mysteries, the ratzim, of the kingdom of heaven, the invisible sovereignty of God. He was taking them much farther than the transfiguration event took those disciples, Peter, James, and John. And this kind of initiation into the Ratzim HaMalkuth, the mysteries or the secrets of the sovereignty of God, the invisible sovereignty of God, that is what would be done by Yeshua on a mountaintop, one-to-one with a person. And the description we have from the secret Gospel of Mark is that the person wears a white linen robe, and it takes all night for him to be initiated into this. And probably the Transfiguration event was a vital part or a beginning part of initiation or of work in all-night initiation, but people had to be capable of it, and there's only so far that people can go. And apparently, Peter, James, and John did not go farther than that, but Mary Magdalene did. And that Peter was, historically, we find from historical documents, really quite jealous of Mary Magdalene, and yet she herself was considered to be the beloved apostle, the beloved